Hey everybody, welcome to the Jayda InStitches show, and welcome to a bonus addition to our 2019 folk art calendar blanket. Let me explain what we mean by bonus. Bonus appliques, which we're going to have a few of over the next 6 months, are optional. So you can use these at the end of the year to fill in little spaces if you want, because we have the blanket laid out. So we don't want you to go jumping ahead and filling in spaces because there is a method to our madness here. But we wanted to bring you a series of little bonus appliques that you can choose to use if you want to help personalize your blanket even more. Back when we made the forest, a lot of you mentioned evergreen trees. So we wanted to also include an evergreen tree shape for those of you who want to do that. There are a few ways in which you can use this applique. Optional applique use number 1. If you're just catching up and you've only just started to make your calendar blanket, then you can use this particular evergreen tree instead of the deciduous trees or mixed in with the deciduous trees in the area where we created our forest. So if you're just catching up now and you haven't sewn anything down, you have that option. Option number 2. You can make up a couple of these and layer them in on top of the forest you've already made if you want your forest to look a little fuller, or tuck a couple in at the end if you want to add a little bit of evergreen tree to your forest up front. Optional use number 3. You can do what we're doing, make the entire blanket the way we have it laid out, and then at the end you can go back through the bonus appliques and decide if there's little spaces you'd like to fill in or make it a little more personal at the end once we've got all the main stuff put together. And optional use number 4. If you're making your own blanket and you want an evergreen applique, this is the one you can use. We're going to show you 2 different sizes today, and you see I have my strings left on so they're ready to be sewn down if and when I want to use them. This is the tall evergreen tree. It's 8.5 inches from top to bottom, or around 22 centimeters. And both of these appliques have been made with the scale of the rest of the blanket in mind. The second applique is a medium-sized evergreen tree. It's 6.5 inches from top to bottom, or around 16 centimeters. And they both have the same trunk pattern. But we're going to show you how to make both today so that you can vary up the sizes of your evergreen trees, and of course, feel free, like we did with the last tree project, to change the colors, to use variegated colors, maybe twisting yarn, and you can play with textures and weight categories, because as you do that, it will help make this very organic shape look even more natural. But just remember, if you're making an acrylic blanket, stick to the same fiber. You want to use acrylic yarn. If you're making a cotton blanket, stick to cotton. Wool, stick to wool. Don't mix your fibers because this is a blanket project, and when we go to wash it, we want to make sure all those yarns play nice together. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up some optional evergreen tree appliques together. Today we're going to show you how to make 2 different sizes of evergreen tree. You're going to want around 20 grams or 50 yards in green for the larger tree and less for the smaller one. They both have the same trunk, however, which is a very scrap amount of brown. You can play with color and texture in this project, so feel free to jump into your scrap pile. We're going to be using a 5.5 millimeter hook, also known as an I or a 9 in the US, a size 5 in the UK, and you're going to want a pair of scissors and a yarn needle. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, take a moment to click that button and the bell so you never miss another episode of our calendar blanket series. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. I'm going to show you how to build both sizes at the same time. No matter what size tree you're going for, whether it's the tall one or the medium-sized one, we're all going to begin with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 13 to start. Once you have 13 chains, whether you're making the tall tree or the medium-sized tree, row 1 is the same for both trees. We're going to skip over the first chain from the hook, find the second one, and we're going to half double crochet into it. You're going to half double crochet into each chain all the way back to the beginning, and at the end of row 1, for either size tree, you will have 12 stitches. At the end of row 1, whether you're making the tall or medium-sized tree, you will have 12 stitches. For both trees, we're going to chain 1 and turn at the end of every single row. So no matter what size you're making, you chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. Both trees, whether it's the tall or the medium size, has the same row 2. So we're going to start with a half double crochet 2 stitches together. So this is an increase row. We're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, and we're going to pick up a loop in the first stitch. But we don't want a super thick half double crochet 2 together stitch. So we're just going to pick up a single loop in the next stitch. So no extra wrapping, just picking up an extra loop. You should have 4 loops on your hook, and that will cover 2 stitches. So 2 stitches from the previous row. Yarn over and pull back through everything. That is a half double crochet 2 stitches together, and that becomes 1 stitch on its own. You're going to half double crochet in each stitch all the way across to the last 2 stitches, and we're going to decrease on that end too. Whether you're making the large or the medium-sized tree, row 2 is shaping up the same way. We began with a half double crochet 2 stitches together. We've half double crocheted into the next 8, and we're going to half double crochet the last 2 stitches together. The last stitch of every row will kind of curl down the edge a little bit, so make sure that you don't miss it. Yarn over, pick up a loop in the first of those 2 stitches, and then just pick up a loop in the last stitch. You'll have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, and then pull back through everything. That's a half double crochet 2 stitches together. So whether you're making the tall tree, which is going to be this dark green one, or the medium-sized tree, which is going to be this light green one down here, row 2 is exactly the same way. So row 1 and row 2 are exactly the same. You will have 10 stitches at the end of row 2, and both trees are going to take a chain 1 turn at the end of each row. We're also going to treat row 3 exactly the same for both trees. You're just going to half double crochet in each stitch across. So at the end of row 3, you will have 12 stitches, I should say 10 stitches in total. So both trees, row 3 is the same, half double crochet across, you'll have 10 stitches. Rows 1, 2, and 3 are exactly the same for whether you're making the large tree or the medium-sized tree. So at the end of row 3, you'll have 10 stitches in your row, and you want to chain 1 and turn. So I've already chained 1, I'm just going to turn. If you're making a tall tree, you're going to repeat the row we just did. You're going to half double crochet in each stitch across. If you're making a medium-sized tree, so this one down here, do not do this step. So only work an extra stitch, an extra row of half double crochets in each stitch across if you're making the tall tree. So at the end of row 4, you'll have 10 stitches if you're making the tall tree. But if you're making the medium-sized tree, just hang on and we'll jump ahead. We've started to diverge our 2 different patterns now. So I've got 4 rows in my tall tree and I've got 3 rows in my medium-sized tree. The tall tree is going to have 2 rows of straight half double crochet in between each decrease row going forward. The medium-sized tree will have 1 row of half double crochet in between each decreasing row going forward. So you're going to have just a little less than 3 times the number of rows in your tall tree as you would if you were making a medium-sized tree. So at the end of row 4, you'll have 10 stitches. At the end of row 3, if you're making the medium-sized tree, you'll have 10 stitches. We're back to a decrease row now. So for the tall tree, this is row 5. Chain 1 and turn at the end of every row, no matter what size tree you're making. And we're back to a decrease row. So we decrease or half double crochet 2 stitches together at the beginning and end of the row. Once you've half double crocheted 2 stitches together, you half double crochet regularly in each stitch all the way across until you reach the last 2 stitches of the row, and you half double crochet those 2 stitches together. So at the end of row 5 for the tall tree, you'll be down to 8 stitches. At the end of row 4 for the medium tree, you'll be down to 8 stitches as well. At the end of row 5 for the tall tree, we're down to 8 stitches, and for the end of row 4 for the medium-sized tree, we're down to 8 stitches. Now we're going to work 2 rows of straight half double crochet for the tall tree, or just 1 row of straight half double crochet for the medium-sized tree. So you chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. I've chained 1, I'm turning, and it's a half double crochet in each stitch all the way across. If you're making the tall tree, you're going to do this row twice, so 2 rows of just straight half double crochet. If it's the medium tree, you're just going to half double crochet in each stitch all the way across once, so only 1 row of straight half double crochet. At the end of row 7, if you're making the tall tree, you still have 8 stitches, so you've worked 2 rows of just straight half double crochet, but your stitch count is still 8. If you're making the medium-sized tree, you're at the end of row 5 now. You still have 8 stitches. You've only worked 1 row of half double crochet. So that is where they're starting to really diverge in size. You always chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. So I've already chained 1. I'm going to turn. We're back to a decrease row now for both trees. So row 8 for the tall tree is a decrease row. Row 6 for the medium-sized tree is a decrease row. Decrease row is you half double crochet the first 2 stitches together at the beginning of the row. You half double crochet in each stitch all the way across to the last 2 stitches of the row. And remember that last stitch can sometimes be kind of curling down the edge. You half double crochet the last 2 stitches together, and now we're down to a stitch count of 8. So decrease rows will decrease by 2 stitches every single row. So the decrease row, you decrease a stitch at the beginning, the end, and of course that means you've taken out 2 stitches from your count. So we're down to 6. Remember to chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. For the tall tree, you work 2 rows of straight half double crochet now, and once you've completed the decrease row for your medium tree, you only chain 1, turn, and work 1 row of half double crochet. At the end of row 10 for the large, you'll still have 6 stitches. So you worked a decrease row and then you worked 2 rows of just straight half double crochet, so you should be down to 6 stitches. For the medium-sized one, you worked a decrease row, which took you down to 6 stitches, and then only 1 row of half double crochet, and you'll still have 6 stitches there. That is the pattern going forward. So to continue making your tree taper, you're going to work a decrease row for your for your taller tree. A decrease row is half double crochet 2 stitches together at the beginning and the end. And if you're making the tall tree, after you work a decrease row, you work 2 rows of straight half double crochet. That will make it long and tall. If you're making the medium-sized tree, once you work a half double crochet 2 stitches together at either end, or a decrease row, you only work 1 row of half double crochet in between your decrease rows. So that will make it conical, but it won't be quite as tall as the taller tree. Remember to chain 1 and turn at the end of every row, no matter whether it's a regular half double crochet row or a decrease row. You can work away making either a tall tree or a medium tree, and I'll catch up with you once we near the top. Once you've worked your decreasing rows and your regular half double crochet rows, and you've gotten down to 2 stitches, so at some point you worked 2 half double crochet stitches next to each other because you were down to 4 stitches. For the tall tree, you worked 2 more rows of just straight half double crochet on top of that, so 2 rows that were just 2 stitches each. And it's the same thing for the medium one. You get down to a total stitch count of 2, but you're only working 1 regular row of half double crochet in between your decrease rows. So your taller tree is going to be much taller than your medium-sized tree. So here we are down to, we've just finished the last straight row of half double crochet where we've only got 2 stitches left in our row. For both trees, we're going to finish off the same way. Chain 1 and turn at the end of the row. We're going to half double crochet those last 2 stitches together. So whether you're making the tall tree or the medium-sized tree, these last 2 rows are exactly the same. So you half double crochet those last 2 stitches left in the row together. Chain 1, turn your work, and only single crochet once in the top. So I'm just going to do that again here with the other tree that I'm working on. So this is the medium-sized tree. Same thing. I've gotten my stitch count down to 2. I've chained 1. I'm going to turn. I'm going to half double crochet those last 2 stitches together. And remember that second chain or that second stitch can sometimes be pulled down the side. So I've half double crocheted those 2 stitches together. I'm going to chain 1, turn, and I'm just going to single crochet once into the top of that one last stitch that's remaining. There you go. There's your medium-sized tree and your tall tree. Your tall tree is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 rows tall. And your smaller one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 rows tall. Tall tree, medium tree. In both cases, you're going to fasten off by leaving yourself a nice long tail. So this is the long tail that you're going to need to sew your tree down to your blanket. So leave a nice long tail of yarn and fasten off by pulling the whole thing back through that last loop. Make it nice and tight, and then you can take the corner and the top of your trees and just pull. Do it both sides, just a little gently, sort of just pull, and that will help elongate that lovely conical shape. So remember, leave a nice long tail so that you have enough yarn for sewing. Fasten off by pulling that loop or that big long tail all the way back through that last loop. Pull tight on the knot, and then you can stretch out the sides by pulling on the corners and the top point. And that will give your tree a nice shape. Let's move on now and put the trunks on our trees. Both of our trees get the exact same trunk pattern. So you're going to grab your brown yarn now, and we're just going to single crochet it right onto the bottom of our existing tree. And we're going to single crochet across those middle 4 stitches, or the middle 4 foundation chains there in the bottom of the tree. So grab your brown yarn. We're going to begin with a slip knot. Pick up your tree, and where your short little tail is that started, you can see that if you pull up on it, that's the first chain. So you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 chains in, find the 5th one, and you're going to join your yarn to it with a slip stitch. Chain 1, and you can really see it now when I pull up on it, and single crochet into the same foundation chain. You're going to single crochet into each of the next 3 so that you have a total of 4 single crochet running across the bottom middle of your tree. So that's 4 single crochet running across the bottom middle of your tree. We're going to chain 1 and turn and single crochet in each stitch all the way back. And then you're going to do that once more. So when you get to the end of this little row, chain 1, turn, and single crochet all the way back. You'll have 3 rows in total in your trunk, and each row will have 4 stitches in it. At the end of the 3rd row, you're going to leave yourself a little bit of tail. You don't need a whole lot, but you do want some brown yarn so that you can sew around the edge of the trunk. So you're going to sew, when you're sewing around the edge of your tree, you're going to just skip your green yarn underneath the trunk and continue out the other side. That's when you're sewing down the tree. And for your trunk, you're going to use the little tail, or the longish tail, I should say, left behind on your trunk so that you can just sort of sew down your trunk without having a different color across the edge. That just leaves us with a couple of tails. So I worked across my little tail down here, but if you still have both of your short tails hanging out, grab your yarn needle and weave your tail in. You can do that by working it across the backs of some of the stitches in the first row that it's attached to. And you want to make sure you don't pull your stitches out of alignment. Make sure that tail is in there nice and tight. Now remember, if you are sewing down your trees to your blanket or another project, you're going to sew them down using the same technique we've been using all along. So if you need a little refresher, you can check out the other tree tutorial we did, and we'll put that link in the description box down below as well. We hope you enjoyed making these little optional fur trees along with us this week, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, have a wonderful week, everybody. Bye!
Hi, everybody. Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.